Me and a guy named Alex had a game going. Each day we would bet on if the water surrounding offshore rig number 23, the oil rig we both worked and lived on, was colder and warmer than it would be tomorrow. The loser would give the winner $3. The day before I had a bet on being colder and Alex on being warmer. I plunged the thermometer into the water and watched with glee as it gave a verdict. 40 degrees F, two down from yesterday. Alex forked over the cash, taking in the smell of crude oil that surrounded the rig. I remember hearing it from somewhere that you could freeze to death in 10 minutes in that water cold. Well, in that case, I suggest you don't fall in, I chuckled. It was one of the few moments of blissful peace during the day. See, we served as mechanics on the rig. Our working hours were spent making sure absolutely nothing broke down. The oil access knew what they could not afford any mistakes, after all the oil spills over the years, so they would work us half to death ensuring us that there wouldn't be any more accidents. Always using it to their bidding, never spending a bit of their fruitful profit on durable machines. Although we didn't know at the time, we would be leaving work early that day. Having finished the game, we began our work. Alex had to fix a few frayed wires near the main oil pump, and I had to check on the pipes underneath the station. The vertically oriented pipes were stuck up on the water from the ocean and used it to cool the machinery, and their exposed position near the ocean made them a target for corrosion. I began making the trudge to the other side of the station where the pipes are located. I prepared to do the check. I tied a rope to the cylindrical belaying machine that was operated by a remote control clipped to my harness. I had fixated the rope with my harness and made sure that I did everything right, and down I went. The pipes weren't corroded, but that was not to say because they were in remotely in good condition. There were two pipes, with one being the main water intake and the other serving as a backup if the first one failed. The first one was in good condition. The second one was clearly damaged, not corroded as I was expecting, but instead it had punctured with dozens or so of tiny holes. I'd never seen anything like that before. Trying to think of an explanation, I raised myself to back at the top of the oil rig and untied the rope. My first priority was fixing the water pipe. It would be an arduous process to weld metal plates back into a pipe to which it was used in an awkward position, but I had done it a few times before, and I would never do it again. As I stepped into the tool shed for a welding torch, I realized that all three of the welding torches we had on the rig were being used by other people. I had no option but to wait there until one of them came. "Sorry," a voice called from behind me. "Do you need this?" I swirled around to find the man behind the voice. Someone named Steven. Steven continued. "I needed to fix a bit of plating on the deck with this. It'll take 20-ish minutes and I'll be back then." "Can it wait? He turned around and walked out of the shed. I stood there for a few seconds, indignant to his rudeness. I jogged outside the shed, trying to catch up with Steven. To the left of the exit was a complicated maze of rooms and pathways. To the front and right, it was pretty much empty. Steven was nowhere to be found on the open area. Concluding that he had left, I followed his footsteps. After only 10 feet of walking, I came to the first look on the road. I could go left or right. I didn't see him straight ahead of me. I turned left. I saw the welding equipment, but no Steven. I wasn't sure why he dropped it. Thing is, I didn't care for either. So I picked it up and went on my way back to the pipes before repeating the process from earlier, tying my harness to the belaying machine and lowering myself. Roughly halfway through the welding job, I caught a glance at my watch. It was 10 minutes into a 50-minute lunchtime. I pressed up the button on the controls and upon reaching the surface, sped into the rig's cafeteria. I already knew it would be crowded in the cafeteria. Cold too, but I was hungry. I wanted to eat as soon as possible. I bumped into Alex on the way there. We caught up in the morning's work, mundane as usual. He was telling me whoever set up those wires he was fixing and needed to be fired. Then there was an ear-shattering noise from underneath the rig. "Christ!" Alex exclaimed. "What the hell was that?" I didn't answer. I just looked around, waiting for an announcement over the PA system. But before anything else could happen, there was a noise familiar to the one before. This time, though, it was followed up by something. The oil rig tilted, roughly 50 degrees to the left. It dawned on me that the screeching noises were from the forward two supports breaking. The left side of the station was practically underwater, and with anybody with half a brain would assume that it was the other two supports would break soon. I heard the PA system announcement I was looking for. A calm voice said, "All personnel are to evacuate the oil rig immediately. All personnel are to evacuate the oil." Suddenly the voice called out. I wasn't sure why this had happened. The command room, where the microphone for the PA system was, didn't seem to be damaged. Alex looked to the end of the rig, and there were lifeboats that were housed. My gaze followed. The rig had acted as a sort of deadly lever, whose fulcrum was the remaining two supports, with our outside going down, the other going up. A sense of dread washed over me as I realized this was a serious issue. The two supports weren't meant to bear the whole load of the rig, and would break any second now. That didn't give us much time, but somehow sprint up a couple 100 feet of steep, slippery metal that stood between us and the lifeboats. Of course, wouldn't we necessarily be out of luck if we didn't make it? A few lucky members of the crew had already made it to the lifeboats. Alex and I would probably get picked up by them, which is why then I lost my footing on the way up and only relined it till once I was 30 so feet away behind my friend. I shouted to Alex that he didn't need to wait up. Alex obliged and continued to climb up the mount rig. I opted to preserve my energy staying still. The chances of me reaching the boats in time were slim, so my best option was to tread the water until it was picked off by a rig if the rig sank. Alex didn't look back. I saw him reach the lifeboats and began lowering the rope, which deployed down into the water. After that, he disappeared below the rig. I assumed he would come and pick me up once the rig broke, and if it didn't break, then he would go to the left side of the rig, the one that was practically underwater, and pick me up there. I spent about 10 minutes waiting for him to come to the left of the rig, but he never did. Eventually, I decided to climb up and got to the right side to see if I could spot him. Peering over the edge of the rig, I saw nothing but 3 orange lifeboats, all freely floating on the water, but empty. Before I had time to process the situation, I felt something kick me in the back and tumbled over the ocean. The fall lasted for around 10 seconds, which gave me enough time to streamline my body by pointing my toes down and crossing my arms over my chest. Due to some weird reflex, I inhaled sharply to the second I hit the frigid ocean water. I couldn't tell which way was up, and I was choking my lungs out. I dared to open my eyes for a split second to figure out where the surface was. After what seemed like an eternity of burning agony, I shut them again and kicked towards the surface. I remember the game Alex and I played. I only had 20 minutes to live in this water. I tried to regain my bearings in order to swim back to the rig, but there was an issue that slowly dawned on me as I looked around, trying to find out. Offshore rig number 23 was gone. There was no trace of it. I could wrap out my mind around the rig being broken and lost underneath the waves, but there was nothing left, not even a bit of debris flowing up to the surface. My leg was numb from the cold, but I could still feel a hand grabbing it. I looked down to vaguely see the humanoid creature. It was hard to tell through the water, but something about it seemed disoriented. I read somewhere that you can get stretched and pulled in all directions if you enter a black hole. The creature looked out of that, but no gray goo all over it. As of now, I simply is here, not pulling me down, just remaining stationary. The rest of the creature is below the surface. I could see it breathing. It's alive and it wants to hurt me, but it knows it doesn't have to. It just has to wait 20 minutes.